What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, Nick, the Korean Zombie, Max Holloway, there's a lot to unpack here, right? Because it was a very meaningful fight for the Korean Zombie. It ended up being his retirement fight. It happened in Singapore, so there were a lot of Korean flags in the audience, a lot of fans. But truthfully, he has fans all over the world. He's a very loved and admired fighter, but so is Max Holloway. And Max Holloway seems to still be right in the heat of his prime right now. The fight itself was a lot of fun. It was very back and forth. I want to get into that, but first I want to talk about the Korean Zombie and what he meant to those fans, because after the fight, they played his walkout song, and the crowd was literally singing it louder than the speakers could play it. There were tears in the eyes of people. You got a good chance to really see how much he's done for the sport and what he means for Asian MMA. What did you make of his performance?
I thought it was fantastic. And, the way he called Max Holloway, just like Max Holloway has called people into the center of the ring to just throw and see who's the last man standing, was really awesome. I can't imagine Korean Zombie going out any other way than the way he did last night. And honestly, I'm glad it was against Max Holloway, because even though Max is still very young, 31 years old, he is an absolute legend in the sport, and so is the Korean Zombie. So it was only fitting for the Korean Zombie to go in there with the number one guy at featherweight, basically the people's champ, and he deserved that sort of respect from everybody in the division in the UFC. And I think you're so right. Of course, he goes by the Korean Zombie. He's a very proud Korean man, spent some time in the prime years of his life as a fighter to go over there and fight for the military. And everything about him is very prideful, and he's very much a proud Korean fighter. But he represents not just Asia MMA, but the whole world for MMA. I mean, the way he went out there time after time after time and neither went for the finish or got finished, but regardless gave the fans exactly what they wanted. I mean, he's got to go down as one of the most exciting fighters that the UFC's ever had.
Yeah, I mean, and he called Max Holloway in to do exactly what it is that Max Holloway does best. The Korean Zombie came out there not like the guy who's the massive underdog, which he was. I think Max Holloway ended up a 7-1 favorite by the time the cage closed last night.
Yeah.
You could throw all that away when it comes to the Korean Zombie. He's going in there throwing caution to the wind, and he's going to try to win in emphatic fashion and really give the fans their money's worth. And that's what he did last night. That's what he did in his final fight. He said, look, you know what? If I can't contend for a championship, I have no business competing in this sport. Max Holloway's the guy right beneath the guy. So if I want to try to get myself back into title contention, I'm going to just throw caution to the wind. I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to throw hands with the guy that literally doesn't ever touch the canvas and try to knock him out. So going for greatness, even in what amounted to be his last fight, is really emblematic of who the Korean Zombie is as a fighter.
Right.
And then Max Holloway. I mean, what more can you say about him? Max Holloway, I don't think has been hit quite that hard in a long time. He was really hurt in that first round. You could tell he did not like the way some of those shots were feeling, even got backed up against the cage a little bit. But Max Holloway is a dog. When you back him into a corner, he bites. And Max is like, you know what? You want to throw down? Let's throw down. And ultimately, that's what ended the fight. And Max said candidly after the fight when he was being interviewed by Michael Bisping, thank God my shot landed before his did, because the Korean Zombie could have easily have put me out just as I put him out. And you got to love that type of transparency and candidness from Max Holloway. And it really felt like there was a lot riding on the fight for both men. Max Holloway, obviously, he's the representative of Hawaii for MMA. We know the tragedies that are happening in Hawaii right now. That was what he wanted to talk about in his post-fight interview, not necessarily a call out or anything like that. Max is kind of beyond the need to call people out at this point with his fighting style and his level of fame. And then the Korean Zombie with all his fans in the audience doing the dance one final time. It felt like a big moment. Everything about the fight, even though it was a fight night main event at a weird time for us here in the States, I was watching it early in the morning yesterday, and I was like, this has that big fight feel for sure.
Yeah, it was a special event for the UFC, and I think it's going to be one of those fights that people go back to and they don't forget for a very long time. The Korean Zombie is the epitome of a fighter. And, a lot of people, when they see the end of their career approaching, they want to try to, find the right matchup and find maybe an easier guy or a stylistic matchup that they can go out there and win, so they don't have to leave face down on the canvas like pretty much everybody else in the sport does. But, you know, when you're talking about the epitome of a real fighter, you have to put Korean Zombie in there. He's never looked for an easy fight. He's never looked for an easy way out. You've never heard him complain about anything. And he's always out there to give the fans exactly what they want, and he's always out there to test himself. Now, look, when you're 7-1 odds against Max Holloway, you kind of know what you're going in there to do. I mean, you're behind the curtains, you're backstage, and you're waiting to walk out there, and you know what the odds are. Even if you're not really looking it up, you can't help but figure out, okay, I'm about 7-1 odds, and I'm going in there with Max Holloway. I didn't get the win and the title shot that I had last time. And basically, if I don't win this fight, I know I'm going to retire. And he goes out there and does it anyways. And he goes out on his shield. That's just like the most gangster thing you can do. It's the true way of a fighter. And he knew that he probably wasn't going to get his hand raised in this fight, but he knew for sure he was going to go out there and give it everything he had. And that was true in the first couple rounds. Obviously, Max was winning most of the exchanges, and I thought Max looked really, really good. Like, if you want to talk about best boxer in the UFC, every time Max Holloway goes out there, he reminds us that he is the best boxer in the UFC. And there's certainly recency bias when we go out and watch these great fights. Sugar Sean O'Malley just looked really good with his knockout win over Aljo. And there's some other great fighters. Peter Yan comes to mind when you think about high-level boxing. But every time Max Holloway goes out there, you're reminded that he actually is the best boxer in the game. And to see Korean Zombie go out there and really stumble him a couple of times and looked like he's given Max the hardest shots Max dealt with in quite a long time was really impressive. So I feel like when you put Max in a corner, you're right. He's a dog. He's going to come out fighting. But same thing can be said for Korean Zombie. And he knew, all right, I'm down probably two rounds to none. I'm going to go out there and give the fans exactly what they want. And this fight ain't going to the judges. Somebody's going to wind up face down. It happened to be him, but I can't think of another way that the Korean Zombie would want to go out other than either face down against Max Holloway or getting his hand raised against the number one guy in the world named Max Holloway.
Well, yeah, for sure. And that was evidenced in the earlier round. I think it was the second round when Max had that really deep anaconda choke. I mean, the Korean Zombie was not tapping in front of that crowd. He was either going to go out, he was going to have to be put to sleep by Max, but he did a great job defending the choke, and he was knocked down really hard prior to that, so he had to get his wits about him, which he immediately did when he hit the canvas. I think Max almost thought he had a walk-off TKO there for a second, and then the Zombie, just being as tough as he is, was right back to it, and then he defended the choke after having been already rocked. So that shows you how tough he is. And he was like, look, I'm not tapping, I'm not going out any other way than a clean knockout, which is exactly what ended up happening. So credit to the Zombie. I will forever be a fan of Chan Sung Jung. I think he really moved the needle for Asian MMA and the sport as a whole. He's, if you've been watching MMA for a long enough period of time, you know who he is and you're a fan. And even some of the newer fans that are coming into the sport now, go back and watch some of the old Korean Zombie fights. It's inspiring, and he's the kind of fighter that will help move this sport and move the needle, make this sport more popular because of the way he fought, how he represented himself as a true martial artist, laying his gloves down, bowing to the crowd. He represents all of the good things that martial arts are and none of the bad.
Yeah, he's given the fans a ton of amazing moments, an amazing highlight reel full of great victories. He's even been on the bad side of some people's highlight reels, but either way, you're going to get fireworks out of the Korean Zombie every time he goes out there. And, you know, spoken like a true champ and a true vet of the sport. If he can't be the number one guy in the world, then he's not in this to just hang around and be number 3 or be number 4 or number 5. That's the words of a real man, a real martial artist. It's sad to say that we probably won't see the Korean Zombie back out there for the UFC ever again, but I'm very grateful for everything he did for the sport, everything he's given the fans, and it feels a little bit sad for me, honestly, to likely be saying the last things we're going to say on this channel about the Korean Zombie for a while. But I can say every time I hear the song Zombie from here on out, I'll always think of the Korean Zombie.
Me too.
Yeah.